Mike, welcome to TCU.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me all right?
That's yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I wasn't sure. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you inviting me, and I apologize about last week. I have a crazy schedule, and I had something I had to do which wasn't on my calendar, and yeah, so the wife wasn't very happy with that. But it's all good now. I'm here. I'm here with you guys. I'm excited to talk to you, and I've been following the class on Twitter, and I appreciate that many of you were engaging with me in different ways. That's the way that you got to do it at this point in your career, as you guys are entering into the workforce and trying to differentiate yourselves from every other student, not just at TCU, but globally for working into marketing or PR. What are you doing to differentiate yourself? And that's one thing that I teach my students at San Jose State, which is like, look, you're not just competing with other small city or state colleges. You're competing with the Stanfords of the world, with TCU, with Columbia, with NYU. So yes, I think it's good that you're doing that. For those of you who don't use Twitter and think it's for old people, I highly recommend that you reconsider that, because Twitter is a place to talk with other business professionals. So other people in the industry, everybody's using Twitter to converse and talk about the industry and move things forward. So it's not as cool as TikTok. It's not as cool as Snapchat and others. I use those two mainly for personal, but Twitter and LinkedIn are the two that I use to build my reputation, right? Not just to build my network, but that's really what I use the networks for. So anyhow, thank you again for having me. I have some slides I prepared for you. I'm happy to send those along as well after the session today. So can I go ahead and share my screen?
Sure.
Okay, let me do that. Whoops. All right. All right, so can you all see my screen? Just give me a thumbs up. I can just see a few of you. Awesome. All right. I don't know how many of you have heard of Zeno Group. We are an integrated agency. We've recently won a lot of awards, and I think a lot of that is due just to the culture of our company, our leadership. Our CEO, Barbie Siegel, is probably the most amazing leader I've ever worked for. She cares about her people. We work hard. We are really like family at Zeno. We are part of the Edelman company. So there's the Edelman, large Edelman. We are Zeno Group. I like to compare us to Edelman like this. Edelman is like the U.S. Navy, right? They're huge, they're big. They pivot. It takes them 24 hours to make a U-turn when you're that large. Zeno, we're like the Navy SEALs, right? We climb in, we jump in, we're agile, we take care of business and then move out. And I just like to say that and joke around, mainly because I used to work for Edelman, and I have a lot of colleagues that were at Edelman for many years and have migrated to Zeno. We are a very humble agency, although we have a little swagger, right? People are starting to notice who we are. And so I like that. I've been with the agency for 4 years, and I lead analytics. And it's funny because I've never worked in analytics prior to this as a function of my job. I've always used data, but it was never really part of what I was responsible for. So, and for somebody who failed algebra in high school, it's a huge accomplishment for me. But it's amazing because I use data to help my PR colleagues and digital colleagues make decisions, make data-driven decisions. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to give you guys some stuff that I think is going to be useful for you in your career. So, so this is who I am. I'm Britopian on Twitter, pretty much everywhere else, even my website. I also have a YouTube channel. I started a YouTube channel back in 2020, and it was one of those things where it was, for me, I lacked confidence in being on video and hearing myself on video. So I did a TED Talk in 2017 that I never watched. It was on YouTube, had a lot of views, but I just was very critical. I was like, oh my God, I sound stupid. I look dumb. I sound like Kermit the Frog. And so in 2019, I said, you know what? I'm going to challenge myself to be a better person, be a better business person. What can I do to improve myself and conquer something? It wasn't about a New Year's resolution, right? Because those come and go all the time. It was about setting a goal for myself. And so I created a YouTube channel, and I said, you know what? I'm going to record 1 video per week in 2020. And I wasn't sure what I was going to talk about. And here we are, 18 months later, well, 20 months later almost, and I have over 100 and something videos. I love being on video. I will be on video. I call my wife in the other room. We FaceTime. I'm no, it doesn't bother me whatsoever. The point of this and telling you this is that I have a lot of good content on the YouTube channel. It's that short URL there. But you know, just as young people entering their career, you have to do things to challenge yourself if you want to grow. Otherwise, if you're the status quo is I mean, if you're comfortable there and you don't want to step out of your comfort zone, stick to the status quo. If you want to exceed those expectations and go to places that you've never been, challenge yourself. And that's kind of where I am today. All right. So I want to talk about what I call the supply and demand of brand relevance. So for those of you who are not familiar with economics or supply and demand, it's an economic model around different marketplaces and economies. And so in this context, I like to really frame up the conversation around the demand of an audience. And so this model, if you look at it on the right, I like to use data and analytics to understand the stories, the topics, the trends, the conversations that are demanding the attention of my audience. If you think about the world that we live in, we are multitaskers, we have multiple devices, we are getting text messages, emails, there's notifications, we're snapping, we're tweeting, we're doing all these things. And every brand that is trying to reach, it's not just the brands that are trying to reach you, it's other people, right? And so if you think about all of the things that try to demand our attention is at a premium, right? We cannot consume everything in our feed. We cannot consume every conversation. We cannot consume every piece of content that we are reading on our LinkedIn feed or on a website. And so we like to use data analytics to understand what that is demanding that attention. So if you think about you working in PR, right? Who is your audience? Now, in some cases, some might say, well, traditional media, right? The Forbes, Fortunes, Ad Weeks of the world. Or in some cases, some might say, well, journalists, the top 50, 20, 100 technology or business journalists, or if you work in healthcare, maybe it's trade journalists who write for healthcare publications. That is one audience, traditional media. That is who you want to get stories written about your brand, your product, your service. In some cases, your audience might be influencers, right? Influencer marketing is a huge thing. Guy and myself and others have been talking about this for a long time. And there's consumer brand influencers, right? The ones who are on TikTok with the abs, they're beautiful, makeup and everything. Then there's the B2B influencers, right? Who don't really have abs, but they're talking more about thought leadership and technology and the future of business. So there's that group of influencers. And then the last one is audiences, right? So if you ask a PR person, who is your audience? They may not say the buyer, right? If you're selling software, it's the buyer. If you're selling sneakers, it's the consumer. If you're selling fashion apparel, it's obviously the consumers who are buying it in the malls and retail. So again, if you think about who you are as a PR, marketing, or communications person, these are the three potential audience groups that you want to target. Now, you have to ask yourself at some point, are we, and I like to call this the self-evaluation, right? Are we, as our brand, our company, if you're an agency, it's your clients, are we meeting the demand of your audience with our supply of content? Okay, so think about that, right? There's demand for products and services, right? Because people are buying everything, right? They know that the new Fitbit is hot right now. People are buying it, the new iWatch, the new iPhone, etc. So the demand of now you're never going to know the demand of the audience unless you do analytics, unless you understand what it is that's top of mind for them. Okay, then you could turn around and say, okay, well, are we publishing the content on our owned channels, our blogs, our forums, our, even our press releases in many cases? Are we meeting the demand topically with what our audience is talking about? Same thing with earned media. Now, you as all, working in PR, you don't really have control over the media, right? You pitch a story, they write whatever they want to write about. It may not fit or align to your messaging, but hey, if you have a good relationship with journalists, then it might. So that is kind of the model, right? It's trying to figure out where the gaps are in the conversation. So before I show you an example of that, let me kind of deep dive, and I've already talked a little bit about who these audiences are. Like I said, the media. Oh, it looks like Alex is trying to get in the room. Should I let her? I got a notification here to let Alex in. Okay, Alex is in. All right, so the audience demand starts with data, right? I just talked about this, the media, influencers, and different audiences. the C-suite as an example, if that is your audience, B2B buyers, consumers, et cetera. Okay, so this is where I geek out on this stuff because this is what excites me. Now, again, if we look on the right, this is what we call a topical conversation analysis on the right. So when we look at an audience, whether it's the media, influencers, or groups of people, we like to cluster their conversations or coverage into these buckets. Now, you'll notice here that these buckets are color coded, right? Now, these are just example keywords. This was for a pitch a couple years back. And they're color coded on purpose. So I'm going to use my mouse here so you can see future workplace. That is the largest kind of block of conversation, right? Then it's future workspace, then smart cities, then office space, right? The size of these colors represent volume. So this simply means when we are analyzing an audience, let's just say it's a group of influencers or a group of buyers, when we look at what they're publishing on social media, we can cluster those conversations to see what is top of mind. So for this audience, the future workforce is top of mind based on the pure volume of conversation that they are having and publishing in the marketplace. Now, if we were looking at coverage, we wouldn't be analyzing social media conversations. We'd be analyzing websites, URLs of Forbes, Fortune, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, right? So if we were looking at coverage, we can say, well, right now, the business media is writing about future workforce. And by the way, let me just move this thing real quick. By the way, so if you look at the smaller outer circle, those are subtopics. So let me just put my glasses on real quick. I'm getting old. So the future workforce, if you look at everything in that second, right, you have employee experience, gig economy, student life, HR, digital transformation. These are verbatim keywords and phrases that, for example, the media is publishing on their headlines in the bodies of their article. Okay, so now we can start to get a better understanding contextually of the conversation of our audience, whether it's the media, influencers, et cetera. Now, on the left, we're looking at our own content. What are we publishing on our own channels? What are we publishing in social media? What is the media saying about us in the media? Now, it has to kind of match up, right? Because if you look on the right, if we're looking at coverage as an example, right, then what we're gonna, and what the market is covering topically about the future of work. Then we say on the left, well, what is the media saying about us and our brand in the marketplace? Is it aligning with anything that is covered, that is being covered more largely amongst the larger media ecosystem, right? So in this case, you don't see a lot of overlap, right? You have maybe let's say, for example, this said smart cities. You might have some overlap, and that just tells you that is where the ownable white space is. So we're looking at language here. We're looking at language, we're looking at keywords, we're looking at sharing patterns of different audiences. And the point of this exercise is, and especially as you enter into your careers going into PR, it's not about counting mentions or, how much coverage did we get for this product launch? Who the hell cares about that? Nobody cares about that. Now, the PR folks that care about that are the ones that are very siloed in their thinking, right? They say, oh, we got 10 stories. Yeah, that was a win. Amen. Right. But there's no additional context. When you look at this and when you look at contextually what the media is actually saying, and is it aligning to a broader narrative, that is where you deliver value to either your C-suite executives or your managers and just the business in general. Okay. So that is what I like to share about kind of this idea of looking at supply and demand. I'm going to just transition into a couple other slides around audience personas, because I think this is where I think you guys are going to think it's pretty cool. So audience personas, back in the day, it was this thing where, Don Draper would like be in a room, drinking coffee, smoking a cigarette with, a chalkboard, probably, jotting down who they think that their audiences were, right? And they'd be, yeah, that audience is Jane. Yeah, she shops at Whole Foods. She's a mom of 3. She works out at 24 Hour Fitness. Her favorite shows on Netflix are this, and this, right? You might have seen personas like that, right? You can actually Google audience personas and you'll see templates provided by HubSpot and others. Now, that's fine, right? That's you could start there. The problem is there's no rigor. There's no rigor behind that way of thinking, okay? So I want to talk about the idea of building personas that are driven by data, okay? Now, I got to be honest with you. Her name, I don't even know this woman's name. It's not really Anna. I stole it from like Instagram a couple of months back. right? But I wrote down, her name is Anna. She's 30. She's a marketing director in Chicago. I wrote up this little thing. She went to USC, whatever. Again, this is for context of this particular persona slide. Now, everything else on this slide is driven by data. Now, I talked about at the very beginning, the demand. Let me actually go back there real quick. Right here, the bottom right-hand corner, audience groups. If the client says our audience is females who are interested in fitness between 30 and 35, who like to work out and health and their mental health or personal health is very important to them. Okay, that could be your audience. And if they came to us and said that, then we would build these audience personas very similar to this. We would find social handles, people like you and me, who self-identify as being a woman, or or in that gender, or somebody who's interested in fitness. And then we would collect all of these social profiles and we would analyze them. And this is the type of data that you can get. You can get top interest, right? We would kind of expect the top interest to be health and fitness, maybe sports and athletics. But after that, you have travel, news and society. Nothing insightful there. If we look on the right, if you follow my mouse here, we can also see their affinities, right? Where do they shop, right? Lululemon, Whole Foods, Nike, ClassPass, which is this subscription to different gyms that you can go to, CrossFit, Athleta, okay? When they consume health-related media, now this is huge if you work in PR, media relations, because we're telling the client, as an example, your audience, when they read fitness and health media, they're reading Women's Health. That is their top publication, then Fitness Magazine, then Health, then Pop Sugar Fitness, then New York Times Health, and so on. So we're giving a PR team, and this is what I provide to my clients, information about where our audience consumes media. And this is important because now the PR team can say, well, you know what? We have an announcement going out next month, and we are going to target these top 3 publications with exclusive stories. Because we know if we get coverage in those publications, our audience will see it, they'll consume with it. We can also find the top influencers down here in the bottom right-hand corner, right? Some of these other data points are important about how different audiences are influenced to purchase, right? Friends and family, I think we can all agree that for the most consumers trust each other. So we read Amazon reviews, we read other types, other reviews, Yelp reviews, et cetera, before we go to a restaurant or buy a product, because we trust other people. Or we ask our friends, hey, I just got this, what do you think? Yeah, okay, I'm gonna buy it. In other cases, it's brand name. Some people only buy, like me, I only buy Apple. I make fun of people who have Androids, and that's just because they're not the cool people, right? I buy Apple. I don't care what other people's experiences are about Apple. I love Apple. I will always buy Apple, okay? Some people are like that. Others just want, feedback based on utility, based on services, based on, experiences. And in some cases, I'm like that. In other cases, I'm not. Depends upon what I'm buying. So this is a snapshot into this audience. Now, this next slide is kind of an alternative slide, right? This is the same persona, but if you look on the right, now we're looking at conversation, right? So we can say, okay, we know that the audience is consuming media from all these publications, but what are they saying about fitness? What do they care about? Now, this is real data, by the way. Now, what's interesting about this data is we looked at, I can't remember the exact parameters. It was females, obviously between, I think, 25 and 40 who were interested in fitness, okay? And this is for a very well-known fitness brand that, and I can't really say who it is, but if you look on the right, this is how they talk about fitness. And there's a lot of insights here, and I wanna just go through this real quick, because this is the kind of information that will help you differentiate. So when they talk about fitness, they talk about community, right? It's about their friends, it's about the members, it's about connection. So if you look at these keywords like connecting, helping, training, meditating, it's not just about the gains. It's not for this group. It's not just about the app. It's not just about the selfies, in the gym, right? Now that may be part of it, but the core of their conversation, the demand by this audience is they prefer to do fitness with friends and family. It's for them, it's a social opportunity. It's also a place where mental health, where they go to wind down and take a break and get support and focus on any issues that they're dealing with, like depression or anxiety. Over here, where you see family, again, it's, you know, and this was interesting because the client was one of those brands that it's indoor fitness. It's like, it wasn't Peloton, but it's like a Peloton, right? Now, this is a challenge for Peloton, because if I'm Peloton, no, this wasn't, it wasn't for Peloton, it was for a brand like Peloton, just in case somebody sees this video in the future. But so if I'm Peloton, and this is the core context of the conversation, I have problems, right? How do I address the idea of fitness with friends or community or in person? You know, let's go work out after you know, let's go work out after we get off work and do happy hour after we work out, right? Peloton Experience does not provide you with that. So this would be a challenge for a brand like that, who is reaching an audience where fitness for them, it's about connecting with others. Now, you can argue that with Peloton, you are connecting with people through the app and whatnot. It's not the same, especially now that we've been isolated for 20 months. People want that human experience. Okay, so it's insights like that are going to help you become a better marketer and communicator. All right. Now, for those of you who want to get into tech, I do a lot of tech, and I geek out on this stuff. You know, the CIO. I mean, you know, these are chief information officers. They're the ones who purchase technology for companies, okay, or universities or whatever. Now, it's the same data source. We're looking at social handles of CIOs, but now notice that just the different components here. Buyer's journey. We can see what analyst firms they prefer to engage with, what types of research they're sharing. But if you look on the far right, this is the money slide. This is what I tell when I'm in a pitch. I say, this is where you will basically want to sign an SOW once we send it to you. Because what we're doing is we're saying, okay, when the CIO, when they're reading business media, these are their top publications, right? Now, some of these you'd expect, right? Forbes, maybe Reuters, Business Insider, Wall Street Journal, maybe not Harvard Business Review, maybe not Fast Company, maybe not Wired, depends upon who you are. But you'll see these little data, these little percentage, well, they're not percentages, it's an index. And we compare these to a general population, because it's kind of a given that, yeah, executives read Fast Company. Okay, I'll give you that. But when you compare it to that of the general pop, how unique is it against the general pop? The more unique it is, the higher that number, the more unique publication that is when you are comparing it to the general population. So, for example, if you look down here at the bottom, CIO magazine, CIOs are 11 times more likely to read this publication than your average business person, and so on. So it's data like this, in my opinion, that I think is really going to help any PR team in any industry prioritize media relations more effective, right? If you know what your audience is reading, why not make those your go-to publications for PR? If you want to get into marketing, digital or social media, then maybe those are the publications where you buy a sponsorship, or you follow the journalist or engage with the journalists who are publishing for those publications. A couple more slides and I'll open it up. This right here, this is the commercial real estate audience, okay? Now, there's a commercial real estate audience, then there's people who make up the commercial real estate audience, right? You cannot just lump, unless it's like a CIO or CEO, and even then you can segment them into smaller groups. You can't just lump commercial real estate audiences into one large group, because there's C-suite and there's everybody else. There's investors in there, there's managers, there's brokers, and then there's reporters. So I wanted to show you this because you can go really deep in audience segmentation and start to analyze not just the commercial real estate audience, but what about the C-suite within the commercial real estate audience, or brokers only in the commercial real estate audience? And then you can start to look at their affinities. And I would bet you that the media consumption habits of brokers in commercial real estate is much different than the media consumption of the C-suite within commercial real estate audience. So you can see how deep that you can go based on segmenting these audiences. Now, just a couple more. Again, this is the head of IT, right? Kind of like the CIO, but one level down, okay? And again, this is just a different way of putting a persona together. On the left, here are her affinities around the media, what channel she's using the most, how she determines what software to purchase, Her name is not Sarah Nix. I just made that up off the top of my head, mainly because my mom's name is Sarah, and she used to like Stevie Nicks. I don't know if you guys know who Stevie Nicks is. Fleetwood Mac. No, probably not. All too young. All right. So anyhow, on the right is what she's talking about. Now think about this. If I'm the head of IT and I'm selling, if I'm Oracle or IBM or SAP or any technology company or Google for that matter, I want to know what the head of IT is saying. I want to know what they care about. So by doing an analysis like this, I can say, okay, here's what she's reading on the bottom left-hand corner, and here's what she's saying. Now we can either write a pitch that is using the same keywords, the same language that the audience is using, and pitch it to Wired, Gizmodo, or Medium, or The Verge. Or I can write a press release, obviously. I mean, nobody really reads press releases anymore. People still write them, but nobody really reads them. And by the way, they're still valuable to an extent as a piece of your job, a very small piece, because media relations is not about writing a press release. That is like 5% of what you're going to do. Okay, there's so much more things that you'll have to do in order to show impact. So, but this data right here, it can inform everything from headlines, in blog posts, in bylines, in social content, in LinkedIn status updates, you name it. Again, it goes back to relationships, right? Now, who would have thought that you would have came to this class to get some relationship advice? I'm going to give you some relationship advice, okay? Because this is how it is. If you, in any relationship, right, you have to relate to other people, right? I've been married 22 years. Trust me, if anybody knows about relationships, I do, okay? And I know how it works. In order to relate to someone, you have to think in not exactly the way that they do. You have to think the way that they do, and you have to talk in a way that they will understand, okay? So if you think about the relationship between a business and its consumer, this is exactly what I've been talking about. And I wanted to say this earlier. If you know what is top of mind for your audience and then speak the same language they speak, that is the building blocks for a relationship. It's also the building blocks to appear in Google. So when your audience is searching for keywords related to what's top of mind for them, they will find not just earned media in the results of a story written about you, but also your owned content. So the blogs and stuff that you're publishing on your site, which by the way, blogs is an art that if you don't blog now, you need to blog. As a student, I tell you have to blog and keep going, because here's why. All the social media that you do on TikTok, on Instagram stories, and maybe Facebook, if those of you still use Facebook, all the shelf life of that content is minimal, right? The minute, especially Snapchat, it's a great example, right? After 24 hours, it goes away. Now you can still go to your feed, post photos and on Instagram, things like that. The shelf life of that content is a day max. In some cases, it's 5 minutes, right? How many times have you went to Instagram and somebody liked the post that you posted last year or last week, right? They're liking your stories right now. They're liking a post that you posted maybe yesterday or today. After that, nobody's ever going to see that content ever again. The shelf life of social media content is minimal. I've been writing in my blog since 2012. I still get traffic to a blog post that I wrote almost 10 years ago because of Google, right? The visibility of long form content and YouTube content also has a shelf life of forever, right? The shelf life of long form content and video content is forever. It will be visible in Google forever. Now, there are things that you could do to make it appear higher in the search results, right? Called SEO. But for the most part, the time that you spend creating all this amazing content on Snapchat or TikTok or what have you, the effort that you put into it, and I'm not saying personally, but the effort that you, or even as a brand, put into it, and the return on that. I mean, think about the guy, right? The guy, did you guys remember that TikTok video where the guy, I swear to God, it looks like my cousin, where he's on a skateboard drinking cranberry juice, right? And there's a Fleetwood Mac. You guys saw that, right? It was the cranberry juice Ocean Spray brand, right? Now that lasted a long time. That went viral. People, earned media behind that. It was off the charts, okay? And honestly, I hate cranberry juice, so I didn't honestly care because I would never drink cranberry juice. Nasty. Point is that there's always exceptions to the rule. Okay, so if you stumble upon some user generated content or content that's going to drive a lot of earned coverage, that's one thing. For the most part, brands are publishing, and even individuals, you as yourself as students, you're publishing, you're putting effort into these content that nobody's going to see a week from now. So think about what you can do to capitalize on that investment of time that you put into creating content for yourself, to make you a thought leader, to differentiate you from other people, other students going for that internship or that job. And what can you do and put it in something in a long form, right? In a blog, a LinkedIn blog, or a WordPress blog, or Medium, there's another. Medium is one that is great. Substack is another one. You can write long form content and you can get people to sign up for newsletters and things like that. So I know I'm kind of all over the place. God, I'm not sure if there's anything else you want me to cover here. I think I was done with my slides.